Hi, my name is Tanveer Alam. I'll be presenting my implementation project on installation and configuration of Radius server and client. Agenda for this presentation is as follows. Presentation will start with brief introduction of Radius and associated terminology, followed by an overview of architectural approach used in this project. Then I will get right into installation and configuration of different Radius components and validation steps. During presentation, I'll be focusing more on the configuration aspects than the installation of these components. For installation steps, I will only be highlighting any specific configuration selected during installation. At the end of this presentation, I'll be providing a list of resources which I have used in this implementation. Those resources has in detail description of these installation steps. At the end, we will look into improvement to current implementation to make it more robust, scalable, and able to handle high traffic volume. Radius stands for Remote Authentication Dial-in Service. It is a client-server networking protocol and de facto industry standard to provide authentication, authorization, and accounting capability for network access requests. There are many implementations of Radius. Free Radius on Linux, Network Policy Server on Windows platform. Radius server can also be used as a proxy server. When used as a proxy, it basically acts as a load balancer. Another term we will be using quite a bit are network access services. These are gateway to control access to network and use a Radius server for authentication and authorization. Examples are wireless access point, VPN server, dial-in server. This slide provides an overview of approach used in the implementation. This project is done on Windows platform using Network Policy Server. VMware-based virtualization platform is used to host 3 Windows Server 2016 instances. 2 network access services will be configured. One is wireless access point, another one VPN server. NPS server will use Active Directory user store for authentication. A typical workflow will be a VPN user connects to VPN server for network access request. VPN server will forward request to NPS server. NPS server, based on its own policies and lookup of Active Directory user store for user credential, will respond with approve or reject message. As a prerequisite for NPS installation, domain controller, Active Directory, and certificate authority role were installed on first instance of Windows 2016 server. Tanveer.com is set up as a root domain. This slide also shows further Active Directory configuration made for this implementation. Server for VPN and NPS are added to the domain. The 2 security user groups were created. One is VPN user, another wireless user. Only user belonging to these groups will have access to corresponding VPN and wireless service. User James Smith and Maria Garcia are added as a test user. Maria is added to the VPN users and James is added to the wireless user group. And lastly, certificate authority is configured as root CA. This role is needed to establish certificate-based authentication for NPS server. Next, I will discuss Network Policy Server installation and configuration. NPS is installed on the second instance of Windows 2016 server by adding NPS role. Although it is not a required step, it is recommended to manage shared secret key using shared secret template. I created one with the name crypto_project. You can either enter this key manually or let system generate it. This shared key is used to establish secret key between client and NPS server. Next, NPS server configuration is a 3-step process. Let's look into each one of them in detail. First step in NPS configuration is to register all network access services, which you will utilize NPS for authentication as a Radius client. This slide shows the registration of the VPN server as the Radius client with the IP address of 192.168.1.252, which is the IP address of VPN server. Also, we have used shared secret template to set up the shared secret key between the NPS and the Radius client. Wireless access service is also set up as a Radius client with the IP address of 192.168.1.1. Second step in NPS configuration is to set up connection request policies, which defines whether incoming network access request will be processed by current server or forwarded to a remote NPS server. In current implementation, all requests will be processed by current server. Incoming requests are processed in the processing order set up during configuration. If no matching policy is found for incoming request will be denied. For VPN access service, condition used for this policy is that network request is originated from the IP address of 192.168.1.252. This ensures that only network requests coming from a known device will be entertained. If multiple conditions are defined, then all conditions must be satisfied. Wireless access point connection request policy is configured similarly with IP address of 192.168.1.1. Third step in NPS configuration is to set up network policy, which defines who is authorized to connect to network. If you recall, we had created two security groups in Active Directory, VPN users and wireless users. Member of VPN user group will be allowed VPN access. Similarly, member of wireless user group will be allowed access to wireless access point. We'll be using those two groups to set up network policy for VPN and wireless access service. Slide shows the configuration for the VPN policy. Here the condition used is that user must belong to the user group VPN user. And for wireless policy, it is set to wireless user group. If you notice for VPN, I'm using user group in the conditions, and for wireless, I'm using Windows group. In this case, both works. I did not find any difference between these two. Similar to connection request policy, network policy is processed in the processing order set up during the configuration. If no match is found, request for the network access will be rejected. Continuing with network policy configuration, next we will configure authentication. This option is available on the Constraint tab of Network Policy Properties window. Both VPN and wireless access services are configured for certificate-based authentication. In order to achieve that, first we need to issue a new certificate by going to Certificate Store on the VPN server and issuing a new certificate for server and client authentication. Next, we go back to authentication method settings as shown on the slide and add protected EAP PEAP as a EAP type. Next, click on the Edit button to configure EAP properties. On this window, select certificate we just generated in the Certificate Issues to drop-down as displayed on the slide. Final step in NPS configuration is accounting. Accounting is responsible for collecting and storing user log-on, log-off activity, network activities, fail log-on attempts, etc. NPS supports saving accounting log in a file on the file system or on the SQL server. For this implementation, I have used file-based storage using DTS format. DTS format has an added advantage to parse and analyze account log easily using Microsoft SSIS platform. I have chosen to log all activity for this implementation. This completes the network policy server configuration. Next, I will discuss the step for configuring Radius client, that is network access services. As discussed earlier, I have configured two network access services for this implementation. Let's discuss wireless access service configuration first. For this implementation, I am using my Linksys E3000 router and I have configured 2.4 GHz wireless band for testing. I have changed SSID to crypto_proj for easy identification during testing. Next, on the wireless security page, security mode is set to WPA Enterprise. This will bring up Radius server configuration settings. For Radius server, it is set to NPS server IP address, that is 192.168.1.251. Radius port is set to 1812, which is the default port. Shared key must be set to the same key defined into the shared key template. Next, let's look into VPN access service configuration. We will install VPN server on the third instance of Windows 2016 server by adding remote access role. During installation, only VPN server is selected. Default options are selected for rest of the configuration. On VPN server properties window, authentication provider is selected as Radius Authentication. Clicking on the Configure button will open another window which will allow you to add IP address of the NPS server. Click on the Authentication Method button and it will allow you to define authentication methods used by VPN server. I have selected EAP MS CHAP version 2 for this implementation. This VPN access service is configured for SSTP protocol. A new certificate was issued by going to certificate store on the VPN server and issuing a new certificate for server and client authentication. This certificate is then selected in the certificate drop-down under SSL certificate binding on VPN server properties window. We have completed the network access services configuration. It is now time to validate that NPS server and network access services are set up correctly and working as expected. Let's validate wireless access service functionality first. On the laptop, access all available wireless network by clicking on the network icon and click on crypto_proj SSID. It will prompt for login and password. After entering the user James credential, who is member of wireless users group, successful connection was established. Next, we will test VPN access service. A new VPN connection profile is created on the laptop by going to Network and Sharing Center and selecting Set up a new network and using the option Connect to Workplace. When prompted, I chose VPN option. On the VPN properties window, VPN server address is set to IP address of Windows Server hosting VPN server, that is 192.168.1.252. Also, I have selected authentication type as EAP, PEAP on the Security tab as shown on the slide. After the VPN connection profile setting is complete, VPN connection request can be initiated either from the VPN window or from the available network list by clicking on the network icon. When prompted, use Maria user credential, who is member of VPN users group. A screenshot shows successful VPN connection. The implementation solution discussed so far will work fine for a smaller organization having a small user base. This slide presents improved architectural recommendation for more reliable and scalable solution capable of handling high volume network access requests from network access services. Some of these recommendations are 2 or more NPS server is deployed to achieve high availability and ability to process high volume of network access requests. Routing of network access requests to these NPS server is load balanced using NPS proxy server. Although Microsoft recommends installing NPS on domain server, I would recommend using separate server for NPS servers installation. Using same network segment for NPS and Active Directory server will alleviate latency issue. Tweaking concurrent authentication allowed setting between NPS and domain controller will help with NPS performance. A failover SQL Server cluster is recommended for central accounting log storage over file-based storage. Server-specific attributes can be added to log for unique identification. Current implementation uses EAP, PEAP, AMS CHAP version 2 authentication. It requires certificate on NPS server but does not require on client. It is secure and works well in most of the scenario. If more security is needed, a stronger certificate-based authentication method can be deployed. It does come with challenge of certificate distribution if internal certificate authority is used to issue certificates. On Windows platform, issues can be resolved using group policy-based distribution on domain computers and through installation program on non-domain computers. This slide lists resources I have used for this project implementation. These resources provide excellent documentation on installation and configuration of an NPS server, network access services, and NPS prerequisite installation. Thank you for watching this presentation and looking forward for your feedback.